big for this kind of planning. I'm not so sure that's true, but what's being proposed by the speaker as comprehensive planning is not comprehensive planning. So the reason I say this is that I started to look at this report very carefully and then started looking at the legislation. So one of the main things that the report talks about is to create this new framework of comprehensive planning. Really what it is a plan to create housing, more and more and more housing every decade. And this would happen through a process with a brand new level of government, right? So right now we have the Department of City Planning. They're the ones when you've got a rezoning that's coming up, you go and you file what's called a ULURP, a Uniform Land Use Review Procedure, but we call it ULURP. And that's what we do. So when we rezoned Laurelton, for example, that went through a ULURP. But when a developer does it, he buys up property and builds something new, and he wants to rezone, he goes through that as well. It's the same process. This would create a brand new process over that, and it would be run by a new director and a new board of advisors. And I'm going to get into this structure, but the main purpose of this is to look community board by community board by community board, to look at areas where new housing development should go, where new zoning, upzonings should go. And this is very troubling to me, very troubling indeed. In addition, it will remove a lot of local input and power beyond what they want to do, which is this 10-year cycle of what they call comprehensive planning and land use. Right now, anytime someone comes in and wants to rezone something and upzone and increase density or even lower density, it goes through this process for each individual project. What they want to do is create a 10-year cycle where certain areas would not go through that process. It would already be baked into the 10-year process. And at the end of the day, the community board and the community and even the council members wouldn't really have the power to overturn it. Again, very troubling, removing our power, not increasing it, but lowering it. And thirdly, and again, although this isn't implicitly described in the report, the potential to lose our lower density zoning that we fought really hard for, our single family zoning and our lower density 2-family zoning that we fought really hard for, again, in South Jamaica and in Laurelton and in St. Albans and Cambria Heights and Springfield Gardens and other areas of Southeast Queens, Northeast Queens, and everywhere else. So one of the main pillars that this report is standing on is another study that was done 10 years ago. And that study was done looking at the zonings that were done between 2003 and 2007 by the Bloomberg administration. And they make this claim that the areas that were downzoned were mostly, and I'm reading the quote, majority white middle income communities in Queens, Staten Island, the Outer Bronx, and Brooklyn. And that's simply not true. It's not true. It's a major falsehood that this entire report is built on, because they're describing this discussion of equity. That isn't what happened in Queens. It's not what happened in Brooklyn. It's not what happened in the Bronx. Certainly, Staten Island is a slightly different situation because they went through a different rezoning process. Manhattan, there were only a few neighborhoods that were rezoned. So I'm looking really at Queens, Brooklyn, and the Bronx, where the vast majority of these zonings were done. So this is a problem. I also recently read the report that they're basing it on, and there are huge problems with this report. This report was written by someone named Vicky Bean. Vicky Bean wrote this report in 2010, but she only looked at the zonings that were done from 2003 to 2007, not the ones that were done from 2008 to 2013, which were actually the lion's share of the rezonings. And she also had a weird methodology, which I'll get into. Again, I don't want to confuse this too much, but I'll talk about that later. But the most important thing is that Vicky Bean then became the head of housing preservation and development under the de Blasio administration. and now is deputy mayor. This person wrote this report, which again is inaccurate, and then used that report to justify shutting down all the contextual rezonings that we were getting up until 2013, and have been doing these rezonings in places like East New York and other neighborhoods which have been violently opposed to them because they didn't really help those neighborhoods at all. In fact, they were pushing gentrification and not helping those neighborhoods, and the people who live in those neighborhoods remain there. So to use this study, and again, this is a pillar of this report that they're basing this new bill on, is wrong. It's just wrong. It doesn't make any sense. So one of the things that I did was I then said to myself, you know, I was involved in a lot of these rezonings in Queens. Let me look at all of the rezonings that were done between 2005 and 2013, which again was the second and third term of Bloomberg. Let's look at all these rezonings, the contextual rezonings that were done. So I'm going to ask my assistant if you could please put up Appendix A for everybody to look at. So what I did, folks, with my study, is I looked at each of the rezoning areas that were done, and I looked at the demographics. The census data came out in 2010. Every 10 years, you get census data, and we're in that now. We're going to get the new census data probably this year or early next year. That's a great island. Thank you, Christina. There we go. Thank you. Is this the PDF or is this the PowerPoint? If you can put the PowerPoint up, that would be great. That's the PDF. The next one, this one. Yeah, that one. Yep. Uh-huh. Yep. And then just start the PowerPoint. Thank you. So I'm going to read you again this this very specific quote that comes from this report, which I find I have grave difficulty with. Just as soon as she starts it, just go to view, I think. Present. Sorry. Go to present. There we go. Thank you. So go to the next one, please. All right. Mayor Bloomberg famously rezoned roughly 40% of the city's landmass, but failed to address the city's historical neglect of people of color and lower income neighborhoods. Sounds good from the beginning, but it's actually not entirely true. Keep going. Next. Instead, DCP downzoned dozens of neighborhoods in majority white, you can keep going, sorry, majority white middle income communities in Queens, Staten Island, the Outer Bronx, and Brooklyn, where local civic organizations pressured the city to restrict development. Keep going. Bloomberg administration introduced new lower density districts in those whiter, wealthier neighborhoods with strict limits on building height and bulk to protect neighborhood character against overdevelopment. Next, please. This is a dangerously false narrative. This did not happen. And this is what I'm going to prove to you. So again, I want you to look at these maps that I'm putting up. These are census data. The colors are census data. That means the majority demographic of each block is a certain ethnicity. So blue, light blue to dark blue is Caucasian or white. Light green to dark green is Hispanic. Light pink to dark purple is Asian American, and light orange to dark brown is African American. And why I show this is, again, this is based on this report. I'm showing these rezoning areas, the exact areas that were rezoned in each rezoning. And already, this is the first rezoning in 2005. You can see it's very mixed. Go to the next slide, please. The demographics show that about 50% of the blocks had a majority white population, 45% had a majority Hispanic population, and 5% had a majority Asian American population. Next, please. And it covered all of these different zoning changes from down zonings to up zonings, because if you remember, a lot of these rezonings balanced the down zonings that we did to protect neighborhood character with up zonings on major corridors like Jamaica Avenue or Merrick Boulevard or Farmers Boulevard, et cetera. because that's where the growth should go. It should go on the main avenues and the main bus routes and the main subway stops, et cetera. So please keep going. So again, here's a very mixed district. Now, here's Springfield Gardens. Next, please.
I found it interesting. I thought that
African American, 100% majority, either a small, 60% majority to 100% majority African American. Keep going. Again, 68 blocks, R3-1 to R3X. That was a down zoning. This is Waldheim in Flushing. Keep going. Asian American, 100%. R2, R3A, R3X. Again, down zonings, 40 blocks. Next. Cambria Heights, the first district that received R2A single family zoning. Keep going. 100% African American. Again, majority, not it's probably 85 or 90% African American, but majority by block. Again, 196 blocks. Keep going. This is in Far Rockaway. This is right by the ocean. Okay, here's a majority district. Keep going. So this is a 95% white district. And again, it's 21 blocks. Keep going. R3X, R4A, R4-1. Keep going. Bayside, this was a big rezoning. I personally designed the Bayside rezoning. It was about 2/3 white and 1/3 Asian American at that point. Again, this is 10 years ago. Obviously, the demographics have changed. Keep going. 346 blocks rezoned. Next, College Point in Northeast Queens. Already 50% Hispanic. Keep going. Okay, I think you're starting to get the idea. Yeah, this was a majority white district. This is Whitestone. Keep going. Go on. Similarly, Middle Village and Glendale. Similar. Okay. Now we go to Far Rockaway. This is Bayswater in Far Rockaway. It was about 50% African American and 40% white, 45% white, and 5% Hispanic. Next, please. This is Fresh Meadows. You can keep going. Again, you can just keep going. I think you start to see that the picture is much more diverse, much more complicated, and much more representative of the population of Queens. It is not what they are stating in this report. Keep going. Same thing. Okay. You guys remember this one, St. Albans Hollis. This was a big one. Okay, Briarwood. They make really nice abstract art also, if you noticed. Right, Laurelton, that was another one. Another neighborhood in Flushing. North Corona. Keep going. North Flushing, this is actually where I live. Forest Hills. Middle Village, Glendale, Maspeth. Astoria. Rosedale. Auburndale, Oakland Gardens, Hollis Hills. South. This was the South Jamaica rezoning, huge rezoning. 530 blocks, one of the biggest ones ever done. Sunnyside, Woodside. This is Woodhaven and Richmond Hill. Floral Park, Belrose, Glen Oaks. East Elmhurst. Ozone Park, wild, incredibly mixed community. Stop, please. So again, these are the 34 contextual rezonings done between 2005 and 2013. Okay, 12 of them out of 34, 12 of them were majority white. And again, that's anywhere from 50 to 100% white. 7 of them were African American, 7 of them were Asian American, and 4 of them were Hispanic. And 4 of them were so mixed that really there was no one group that predominated, or it was split 50-50. So I think you get a picture here that I have just completely disproved the main pillar of the reasoning behind their report. Okay, take that down, please. The next thing I'm going to show you has to, oh, I'm sorry, this is good. I just want to show you. These are the 34 rezonings that were done, 6,500 blocks in Queens. It was actually an enormous portion of Queens. We got most of the contextual rezonings in Queens. We did better than most of the other boroughs, although the other boroughs had many of them as well. But we really were able to do that. And again, from working class neighborhoods to middle class to upper middle class, from every demographic possible. That's what makes Queens Queens. Go to the next one, please. And just to show you, all the ones in green are the ones that I actually designed. So that's about half of them, and I actually advised on a number of the other ones too. So that's the first thing, and I think it's very powerful to look at this because it just shows that this is not correct, that they're basing their argument on a false narrative. Now I'm going to talk about single family zoning very quickly. I'll make this fairly quick. One of the things that's in this report is on page 23. Now, as a planner, when I make an argument, as you see, I'm kind of like Rain Man, right? I put together all this data. So there's like so much data, it's almost too much to look at, right? But it's the idea is to show these are the facts, folks. So one of the things that you do is you create case studies. Now, for a report like this, that's going to overturn zoning in the entire city of New York and change everything, I would think you would come up with more than 2 case studies. But they only came up with 2 case studies. They wanted to compare Seattle, Washington, to New York in terms of comprehensive planning. Now, Seattle has about 750,000 people. It's about less than 10% of the population of New York. So that's just indicator one. The other case study they used was Minneapolis. Minneapolis is about the size of Staten Island, geographical. It's also the size of Staten Island in terms of population. It's also the same as Staten Island in terms of demographics. It's about 2/3 white and 1/3 non-white. It also has an extremely, let's call them as an extremely progressive, and I say that in quotations, left-wing city council. Now that case study is all about how Minneapolis last year eliminated single-family zoning in the city of Minneapolis. It's the first major city to do this. And talked about how great it was, and these are their own words, remarkable, incredible. Again, when I see words like this, that kind of tells you where the authors are coming from, okay? Now, they have now since stated that that was never their intention. They're never going to eliminate single-family zoning. But as I said, I'm going to read you the first paragraph. Case study, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Minneapolis is another city drawing attention for its comprehensive planning practices and its role in facilitating a remarkable recent achievement: the elimination of single-family zoning and minimum parking requirements citywide. Just imagine, folks, if they got rid of minimum parking requirements for Southeast Queens or Northeast Queens for that matter. Just imagine, okay? This is what we're talking about. Another quote was, another quote from the same spot is, hold on, let me find it. Well, okay, I'm not gonna look for it, but my point is, this was supposed to address longstanding historic issues of racial and economic exclusion and equality. But Minneapolis is not New York. It's a very different city. So I'm going to ask Christina to please put up Appendix B. Because I want everybody to understand it's really hard to compare apples and oranges. And that's really what we're talking about here. Okay. Christina, if you can put up Appendix B, the PowerPoint. Okay. Thank you. And again, in the PowerPoint version, that's, I think, the PDF. Sorry, go back. It's the one next to it on the right. Yep, that's it. Okay. Again, go to present, or present probably. So take a look at this, guys. Go ahead. There is a nationwide movement to eliminate single-family zoning, and that is true. Most cities in the country have very high percentages of their land area designated for single-family zoning. Keep going. Seattle, we mentioned Seattle. See, population 750,000. It's about a quarter the size of New York City, 81% single family. Keep going. Portland, Oregon, 77% single family. It's about a third the size of the city, and the population is less than Seattle. Los Angeles, 1.5 times the size of New York City, half the population, 75% zone single family. Keep going. Minneapolis, again, before they eliminated single family zoning, population 429,000. That's a little less than Staten Island, 54 square miles, a little less than Staten Island. Keep going. Even Washington, D.C., more than a third of Washington, D.C. is zoned single family, population 700,000. New York City, 15%, 15% of the city. So let's take a look. You have all the areas in dark pink are zoned single family. This is Seattle. So outside the city core, everything is zoned single family. Keep going. Portland, again, same thing. Outside of the city core, single family. Look at Los Angeles, sprawling. 3/4 of it is single family. Again, before they changed Minneapolis's zoning, as you see, the core is all zoned different, but the outside is all single family. Keep going. Washington, D.C., 36%. And now we get to New York. Now you'll notice in New York, there are only 2 real big areas of single family, Northeast and Southeast Queens, which has the lion's share, more than 60% of the single family zoning is in Northeast and Southeast Queens. And most of the rest of it is in Staten Island, with a few spots in the Rockaways, Howard Beach, around Kew Gardens and Forest Hills, Central Brooklyn and Victorian Flatbush and Riverdale. And that's about it, folks. So take away boards 7, 8, 11, 12, and 13, and we're down to maybe 6% of the city having single family zoning. I mean, it's really crazy. So I'm just going to breeze through these. All the areas in yellow are zoned single family. So this is board 13. You can see it's an enormous percentage. It's 65 to 75%, however you look at it. You can keep going. Same thing with board 11, 65% of all of board 11, 75% of residential, just residential zoning. Keep going. Board 7, 35% and 50%, however you look at it. Board 8, 35% and 50%, however you look at it. Board 12, sorry, 15% or 25%, however you look at it. Board 10, only Howard Beach, but Howard Beach makes up a pretty large portion of board 10. Okay. Board 14, basically some spots in Far Rockaway and Bell Harbor and Neponset. Keep going. Forest Hills, a couple of spots in Forest Hills, a couple of spots in Richmond Hill and Kew Gardens, and 2.5 blocks in East Elmhurst. And that's it. So we're not talking about a lot of single family zoning, except our parts of Queens, Northeast and Southeast Queens. So this is a very important issue to bring up, because while they may be saying that that isn't their plan, that's what could happen, especially if this new comprehensive planning program comes forward. That brings us to the actual legislation. So please put up Appendix C. I want to go through a little bit of the legislation, if that's okay. I think it's very important for people to see it for yourselves.
And some of you may have the legislation. I already put it in the chat. So for those of you who may have just tuned in, I guess I'm gonna have to reshare it, but y'all can look at the legislation as well.
And I'm going to try to refer to what pages. I didn't put it on the PowerPoint because I only did this yesterday. I apologize. I'm going to try to go through the actual where the legislation is on the pages. So let's take a look at this. So I want you to look at this. Everything you see in blue is direct quotations from the legislation. The red is just me kind of highlighting. But again, this is like 25 pages long. Actually, it's 22 pages long. I tried to distill as much as possible into 2 pages so that people can understand. So the new director of the Office of Long-Term Planning, who will answer only to the mayor. So again, think about it now. You've got a director of city planning that only answers to the mayor. And now you're going to have a director of the Office of Long-Term Planning that only answers to the mayor, whoever that mayor may be. Will submit a draft citywide goals statement with a single public meeting in each borough required. Now, they're saying, oh, there's going to be more than that, but in the legislation, you're only required to have one meeting. This statement, the statement as you read it, gives lip service to other issues. Remember those things I was talking about with planning, like parks and economic development and infrastructure and commercial and this and that? It's all in there. And it talks about the things that are important, and it brings up the things that should be put in the budget, but it focuses in terms of actual legislation requiring action. It really focuses on housing, which is why I say this is not a comprehensive planning document. It's a comprehensive housing or comprehensive unit count or comprehensive upzoning document. Okay, this is furthered, and this, again, this is all in blue, is directly from the document. This is furthered by, quote, determining quantitative community district level targets for each community board, which, quote, shall include, but not limited to, prioritizing population growth where applicable in areas that have high access to opportunity and low risk for displacement, unquote, with a limited additional input from borough presidents. A final citywide goal statement will be submitted up to 2.5 months later, 2.5 months later, with a single public meeting in each borough required. The final statement, quote, shall include such changes and revisions as the director of the Office of Long-Term Planning deems appropriate after reviewing the comments received on the preliminary citywide goals statement. Okay. Again, you've got this director, you've got this new advisory board, this steering committee, and you've got these goals, and they're going to come up with this draft and then final goals statement. Once this statement has passed, there will be quantitative community district level targets that the director finds appropriate to include, followed by 3 potential land use scenarios for accommodating the community district level targets, each of which shall include all applicable proposed future land uses, included but not limited to residential, commercial, industrial institutions, that means community facilities and other things, open space, transportation, and utilities with indications for relative height and density. Now, that's the one spot that kind of sounds, wow, they're looking at more than just one thing, right? They're looking at everything. Unfortunately, as soon as you get past this, please go to the next page. The next thing they talk about is what these 3 potential land use scenarios are and what they will be submitted by. So again, you've got these 3 potential land use scenarios. So let's say Community Board 12 creates one scenario. Now they've been given this goal. They've got this goals report. And in the goals report, maybe the director states, well, you know what? In the next 10 years, we're expecting, based on projections, because that's what planners do, by the way, they make projections. They're going to project that the population of New York City is going to go up by 500,000 people. Every community board is going to have to absorb potential new development because we're going to have to accommodate those 500,000 people. So let's say Board 12 is expected to accommodate 5,000 people. Maybe it's 7,000, maybe it's 10,000, who knows? But they're going to have to accommodate this, right? So Board 12 comes up with one land use scenario. This long-term, the borough presidents for each borough comes up with another land use scenario. And the third one is a long-term planning steering committee, which is appointed by 4 by the mayor, 4 by the city council, and 1 from each borough president. So there's 13 people, the borough presidents and the community boards. Each of the 3 potential land use scenarios shall prioritize 1, areas for population growth where applicable, that have high access to opportunity and low risk for displacement. Okay, again, let me translate that to you. High access to opportunity, places where it's easy to develop, places where there aren't brownfields that are going to be limits to development, places where it's easy access to transportation, places where there aren't that many people living necessarily in relation to the amount of development that they want to build. So a low density neighborhood to a high density neighborhood, or an area with high density where there's access to places, et cetera, right? So again, there are two things in this part of the document. One, areas for population growth, and two, any other priorities identified by the director through the public engagement process. That would be those public hearings, those maybe 1 or 2 or 3 public hearings, which is at the director's discretion. So again, 1, housing; 2, everything else. That is not comprehensive planning. Comprehensive planning is balancing everything, not having one, a focus on housing only and population, and 2, everything else. Infrastructure needs, now again, I'm summarizing this. Infrastructure needs will be cataloged, but by no means will housing targets and subsequent adoption of land use scenarios be reliant on those needs being met. So let's say in this document, there's sewer replacements that need to happen, or water tunnel replacements that need to happen in Springfield Gardens. And it's going to cost, their projections are it's going to cost $100 million. Well, they also think that parts of Springfield Gardens should be upzoned to meet that population growth. There is no guarantee that the money for those sewers or schools or whatever else that they're identifying in the budget is going to be connected with the housing targets. So it's not like they're saying, well, until those sewers are built, we're not going to upzone these areas, or we're going to upzone these areas while we're doing the sewer projects. None of that is explicit or implicit in this document. It just says we're going to identify these needs, which, by the way, those needs are already identified in the citywide or the borough-wide or the community board-wide 10-year process, which I know they have a 10-year budget process. You guys are going to be going through that very soon, actually, budget priorities. Within 1 year of the initiation of the process, the director, quote, shall submit to the council, borough presidents, and community boards a draft comprehensive long-term plan. No later than 150 days after the submission, the long-term planning steering committee, applicable borough presidents, and applicable community boards shall each submit to the Speaker of the City Council a recommended preferred land use scenario for each applicable community district, with the possibility of amendments. Those amendments would be made by the City Council. Okay, again, 150 days is 5 months, right? So let's think about this. And then again, the next part, within another 5 months. Let's think about this. For every ULURP that comes up, for every rezoning that's proposed now, there's a 7.5 month period that's mandated by law. And there's also the pre-period, which can go on for days, weeks, months, or years before they even certify it. Now with this process, everything is squeezed into 1 month or 3 month or 5 month periods to get everything done, right? Within another 5 months, there will be a hearing at the City Council where they will adopt a single resolution establishing 1 preferred land use scenario for each community district. If the council fails to adopt a preferred land use scenario for each community district by such date, the director shall select preferred land use scenarios along with a written reply as to why. So again, to translate, there are 3 versions. One of those versions will be picked by the City Council. And if the City Council can't agree, they can't agree on it, then the director will step in and the director will pick one of those 3. So again, my comment is death by poison, death by indigestion, death by heart attack. It's one of these 3 scenarios, and ultimately you're not going to get to pick them. It's either going to be the council or it's going to be this new director. So let's go to this. So now here's an example. I want to give you I just put this together for Community Board 8 land use last night. So I apologize for not tailoring it to Board 12, but I think you'll get the picture when you see it. These are the borders of Community Board 8. Hillside Avenue on the south, Flushing Meadows on the west, LIE on the north, and Cunningham Park Clearview Expressway on the east, or Francis Lewis Boulevard. So let's say the 3 choices of these 3 areas that, CB8's told, okay, you're going to have to choose some areas that are going to have to upzone. CB8 says, you know what? Let's do it in the R4-1 zone that was done in the Briarwood rezoning. It's right near Hillside Avenue and Queens Boulevard, near the auto repair shops. Let's go to the BP. The BP says, you know what? This is a better area to upzone. It's by the Parsons Boulevard station. It's an R5 zone. And then let's go to the the long-term planning steering committee. That's the 13-person committee. This is the R3X zone that was rezoned during the Jamaica rezoning. So keep going. So one of them would go from R4-1 to R7A, which is a big jump. One of them would go from R5 to R7A, and one of them would go to R3X to R6A. And they're all next to the zones that are there, right? So the R3X is chosen by the council. This is the one that the council chooses. And you'll see it's right next to an R6A zone. Go to the next one, please. There's the R6A on Hillside. So the comprehensive plan passes. The R3X, stop for a second, Christina. The R3X is designated as the area where growth can occur, but it's not immediately rezoned to R6A. No, what happens is a developer comes in and buys a couple of those houses in that area in red. He then puts in a proposal to the city planning, to Department of City Planning. I want to upzone this to R6A. Okay, because that R6A zone has been approved in the comprehensive plan as being appropriate, and he's going to go to an R6A zone, there is essentially no public review because it aligns with the new proposal for the comprehensive plan. So again, the R3X is not immediately rezoned to R6A, but a developer comes in and says, you know what, I'm going to buy these properties and I want to rezone this so I can do it. And he does it, it aligns with the new comprehensive plan, and it short circuits the entire ULURP process. The council member does not even need to hear it, and it just sails through, okay? That, and then what happens? Go to the next one. And that becomes part of our city. This is what's going to happen in every community board in the entire city, okay? This is very, very dangerous. So that's where I'm at. I will I'll refer to another report after when we start talking, but I'm going to leave it to Kenny now. Thank you so much, Kenny.
All right, I appreciate your input, Paul. Also, we had on the flyer, Mr. Manny Martinez.
That's right.
And we were doing a lot of studying for the past week and some change since we had the meeting with Renee when she had brought this to light. So Manny, could you please give us the insight that we went over? And
Yes, sir. So good evening, everyone. Kenny, thank you for having me. My name is Manny Martinez. I'm the resident council president for South Jamaica Houses. And I've been also doing some other policy research and putting together a lot of what's going on in the city that is actually going to have a huge impact on us. Some of the things that we identified, Kenny and I, as we was going through this bill and checking out the amendments, and one thing that I do want to specify on is key verbiage, which is the prioritization of population growth, right, in areas that have high access to opportunity and low risk for displacement. And so that right there, that language there is indicative. It's a signal, right? That's a gentrification signal. That means that they're looking to disperse underserved communities, to move them into, like it said, areas that have high access to opportunity and low risk for displacement. There is no other language outside of that or referring to anything else. There's no language saying of the preservation of underserved communities or bringing up or balancing the equity for underserved communities. Another thing that had happened is the COVID-19 had created a transparency on our communities in regards to how our communities have been enduring, right? So there has been a CDC report that there has been a report that was referenced by the CDC isolating the fact that 20% of the counties throughout the country are predominantly Black, and of that 20%, 52% of the contagion rate and 59% of the death came from that 20% of counties. Now, that was all credited to the structural racism that we see in our areas. In this bill, you see a reflection of that. They speak of racial equity. They speak of, they have that terminology there, but the input that is to come from our communities and to be used to make these types of decisions in this type of legislation is not existent. It's in consideration. And you can read that where it says, as determined by the condition of the city zoning report prepared pursuant to section 20, a statement of planning policy of the Department of City Planning and Planning Commission, which shall take into consideration at a minimum the information contained in the conditions of the city report. And so we're just looking at a consideration of what the impact is from our city on them making these types of decisions, these rezoning decisions.
You're going over the legislation right now, correct, sir?
At that part right there, yes. I was just rereading the legislation, and that legislation was 17B towards the end of that paragraph. And so reflecting that, and reflecting the other things that has been going on into our communities that's leading up to this. This is just another component that looks at the entirety of the planning that they have intended for New York City in general. We have, in doing the research in regards to gentrification, we see that there's certain traits that cities that have been high gentrification have, such as a high presence of billionaires. In New York City, currently we have, or have had, 113 billionaires when 2020 ended. And I say have had because we know that there has been an exodus of that high net worth of those high net worth individuals, but that was due to COVID. They are expected to return. And when I look at the sponsorship of the bill, being that, Corey Johnson being one of them, whose area of representation that he represents is one of those areas in which you have those high net worth individuals, that live there. This brings concern. We are not mentioned in this bill. We don't have proper representation in this bill, and it is going to have an impact that is consistent with the other things that we see, right? So if we look at just South Jamaica, in 2018, there was a downtown Jamaica Queens development report in regards to projects, and where they were developing 14 hotels and 30 mixed-use developments, which some of them had the affordable home affiliation to it, and commercial space combination to it. And that started happening in 2018. We starting to see the privatization of public housing and the redistribution of that subsidy. And now we're starting to see a larger focus of rezoning. This is what is concerning. And this is one of the main reasons that I feel that we need to put a pause on this and begin to and restart the efforts so that we can see ourselves and reflect ourselves in this. Because now the other thing, and this is something that Paul had brought to my attention, is the fact that we haven't had any kind of attention to this in this area for 30 years. And these things that are happening now are happening at a rate. COVID has been something that slowed it down and gave us a time to relook and to rethink of what's going on, and gave transparency to our hardships to the world. We know what we're going through, but it gave transparency to hardship to the world. In this now is the opportunity for us to now reflect on the agenda that they have and how they're implementing it, right? And now, mind you, that terminology, the priority of population growth in areas of high access to opportunities and low risk of displacement. And that focus, that terminology, you can see that in various parts of the bill. In another part of the bill, which is concerning, where it says, where it discusses the priorities of rezoning, right?
What
And
page,
it says,
what page is that, sir?
and this is on, all right, so this is the fourth page. So it's section 3, subdivision. Now, forgive me, let me get my glasses.
And I just need everybody, when we speak, and we're speaking about the legislation, we're not going off of emotions, we're not going off of hearsay. This is what was written. So a lot of times when we get information like this, a lot of people don't take time to read, and some people can look at it like I first did, and I looked at it and was like, yo, there's underlines, there's brackets, what does that mean? I had to call someone to assist me to have a concise understanding of what I'm looking at. So you might be that person right now. So if you are that person, just take some time out and listen. And can you break it down as far as the underlines and the brackets, so the people could have a little bit of better understanding of what they're looking at if they downloaded the legislation offline?
Definitely. So this bill in and of itself is being amended. So this means that this bill was in existence, and this was 30 years ago that this bill has been in existence, is being retouched now. So as when you look through the bill, you will see three types of type. You will see the regular type, which means that that's the language that was already in the bill, in the initial bill. You're going to see brackets. Those brackets are the language that was in the bill prior that is being changed. And then when you look at the underline, that underlined section is what the change is. So for example, it says that,
Touch on the mayor, please.
yes, I was just about to do that. It says that in every 5 years, which is the mayor, and then it says mayor in bracket, and then it changes it to director of the Office of Long-Term Planning, which means that now that authority will be taken away from the mayor and now given to an agency director. And so that is also concerning, considering the mayoral election that's coming up and the candidates who are campaigning for it, right? You have Yang, you have Eric Adams, which is a favorite, and several others, but those are the ones that are of concern, and it should give us pause that this is coming out at this particular time, right? Timing, especially with policy, is a key focus that we need to pay attention to. And so they're taking away the power, that mayoral power, and giving it to a city agency. I also wanted to take a look at, now this was section, all right, so 17. And mine is the 4th page, right? Paragraph 4, right? When it says 3 potential land use scenarios for accommodations to community district level targets established by clause 3 of this paragraph, each of which shall include all applicable proposed future land uses, right? Including but not limited to residential, commercial, industrial, institutions, open spaces, transportation, and utilities with indications for relative height and density. Each of the 3 potential land use scenarios shall prioritize: 1, areas for population growth where applicable that have high access to opportunity and low risk for displacement, right? So that's the first scenario. And then number 2 is any other priorities identified by the director through the public engagement process pursuant to paragraph 3 of this subdivision. So when we look at it, they're telling you again, the priority, the focus of this bill is population growth in those particular areas. And so we have to look at where would this population growth come from, right? This is just by design. And so if they are coming into our communities, much like how I referred to earlier with the 2018 Downtown Jamaica Development Report, where they have 30 affordable houses being developed, not houses, I'm sorry, complexes being developed, and 14 hotels being developed, private hotels at that. This is a cause for concern, and we can see how one links into the other. Now, Paul broke down the specifics of how the rezoning will be, the discrepancies in the rezoning and the reports that were provided. There's also another thing that he brought up that I would like to bring attention to as well. Minneapolis and Seattle were both case studies that were used in the summary that came along with this planning together policy. Both of those areas have been highly gentrified, right? Minneapolis and Seattle. And this is a common trait that we're seeing. So I ask that we all take a look at, when we do read this, I'm going to repeat again the dynamics of the amendment, how to read it in regards to what you're looking at. The underline is the new, what is being amended, the new language that's being introduced into the policy. Whatever you see in brackets, which is usually right next to what's underlined, that's what is being changed. That's what the policy used to say, and that is what's being substituted. And then if you just see it without any underlines or brackets, that just means that that is the original language and they're not changing that part of the language. So this helps us so that we can isolate to see what it is that they're changing. And we can start making some determinations. We also have to pay attention to the terminologies, right? Because when they say an area that has high access to opportunities and low risk for displacement, right? It's not coming out to you and saying what type of community that is, what that community looks like. But we can pretty much understand what that community does look like. If we were to take a look at
Brooklyn.
Jamaica, so there's a community profile. The New York City Department of Health and Hygiene did community profiles on several areas throughout the 5 boroughs, Jamaica and Hollis being one of them, where they give you the population and they also give you the health report. If you're high in obesity, high in blood pressure, they'll also give you an economics report on unemployment. They also give you a profile on the, for example, the supermarket ratio. So in Jamaica, we have a 1 to 20 supermarket ratio, meaning that for every 1 supermarket, we got 20 bodegas or 24-hour stores. And then what's consistent with that is that we are high in obesity, diabetes, and heart failure and heart disease. Now there is a consistency in that, right? When you look at an area like Long Island City, which has a higher European demographic in that area, and you have a 1 to 10 ratio of supermarkets to bodegas. You have a lower health impact, negative health impact in that area. And so we're making these comparisons. This is what, and I'm bringing that up to reflect what an area with high access to opportunity and low risk for displacement looks like. This is the comparisons. And so this here reflects the movement of gentrification, how they would begin to restructure and decapitalize the social and political power that we have. And that's another part of this. So I want us to really take a look at this and see where we are not reflected. Because that's the key language, right? That's the key focus, especially for us who have endured this type of neglect for so long and so invisibly. This has now been something that has been referred to on a national basis from government platforms. The CDC will give you a ton of information discussing on structural racism and the reason why our death rates were so high. In COVID-19, the Black and the Hispanic death rate equally was 2.8 the times of that of Europeans or white, right? Now, I'm not making this a racial issue. I'm just bringing up certain facts and certain impacts that we have, and this does not speak to that. But in the beginning of it, and I'll read the beginning of it. Because it says here, right? Citywide policy goals related to the long-term issues identified in the conditions of the city report required by subdivision J of section 20, which shall include, but not be limited to, goals to reduce and eliminate disparities across race, geography, and socioeconomic status in access to opportunity and the distribution of resources and development. So they're including race, they're including geography, they're including the socioeconomic status in the bill, because these are now trend words. These are now that have been popularized, forgive me. And so that kind of language in the beginning gives us a sort of ease to say, well, I may not understand this bill, but I know that this bill is going to help me because it's talking about these key words that I'm now familiar with, that I'm now, or it's talking to my area of population. But then you won't, when you read, for many, I'm not going to say for all, for many, when they see that part of high access to opportunities and low risk for displacement, they won't see how their communities are implicated. And so we're looking at another key thing that we have to pay attention to, especially with the privatization of public housing. And we have to understand that public housing is in our areas throughout the city. When you find it, we are not too far away from a public housing development. And one thing that's consistent with public housing is red line segregation. And all the areas, or predominantly most of the areas of public housing developments, are red line segregation has been a part of that particular community. This is, in general, when we're talking about gentrification, because that's the indication of it, because population growth has to come from somewhere, right? And most likely it's going to come from out, because it's not talking about population growth in the city. And I just want to make this distinct. It's not talking about population growth in the city. It's speaking to population growth in those communities. And I'll read that again just to specify it, right? Because I don't want us to confuse population growth with, because there will be a growing population that's coming into New York City, right? That is something, but that is not what that's not what they are referring to in this. The language is to prioritize population growth in areas, right? They're talking about in areas that have high access to opportunity and low risk for displacement. This is for population growth in those areas. That's to be able to control what comes into those communities, one, and also so that they can restructure the demographics of the existing communities. Here's some history about South Jamaica and the surrounding communities in Southeast Queens. All of the surrounding communities in Southeast Queens at one point was 99% white, except for South Jamaica. When South Jamaica Houses 1 was built in 1940, the surrounding areas, St. Albans, Laurelton, Queens Village, and all of the other surrounding areas, Jamaica Estates, was 99% white. Gentrification now is the reinsertion, for lack of a better term, of this demographic. And they're coming for, I guess, for this area that they may have, or that their families may have come from. Or I don't want to be too indicative of that, but what I do want to say is that this is something that is happening. That is the language that we really need to pay attention to, because we get caught up. Excuse me. We get caught up. Forgive me one second. We may get caught up in the specifics of it and understanding of it and seeing how we may benefit individually. But we also have to understand that if we don't protect the community that we live in, the individual benefit will drastically drop for us.
Correct. One of the things Paul also said that was it was like a bell for me, was that individuals will have to make the choice to sell that property first to the developer. So now individuals who we go in our communities, we see all over the place, people are willing to buy a house for cash and these things like that. So when the zoning situation, and he was explaining the R6 zoning and the R2, and the difference where an individual could actually have a regular house, and then the whoever purchased the house, it doesn't necessarily mean that the owner, it could be a developer. They purchased the house. They say, listen, well, we want to take this house and we want to turn it to the zoning right here to match the core of what's going up on this side. So all of a sudden we looking around and we don't even see no sun no more because of these individuals are building consistently around us. And it's bad enough, like a lot of us are vitamin D deficient at this point. You know what I mean? Like, we not going outside. A lot of us is quarantining. So what is this going to be when we got buildings all over the place? But that's a whole nother conversation in itself. Do we have any people here that would like to have questions? And if so, look, raise your hand. There's a hand thing, and I will call you respectively for your questions. Okay. A Cook, unmute yourself, please.
Okay, so I have twofold. This is really, really serious and a really critical situation, not just for Queens, but just as a city as a whole. Now, two things. We got to look at this as a whole, and that's why we have to mobilize. We have to get together and we have to organize, and we have to come up with a strategic plan to combat what's happening. One, my mom lives here in the Promenade housing over here in Queens. Now, they gave them this paperwork, right, about the RAD program. You know about that, Manny. It's the RAD program, right? Now, this program is if you read this jargon, if you read it, and it's going over and over again, and they're gonna do this to the apartments. They're gonna give it to developers to do the work in the projects. They are supposed to be getting rid of the persons who's gonna collect the rent. All of this, right? And they're going to do all of this work. So I'm saying, to me, why would I, as a developer, want to come and do work in the projects? How am I going to benefit from it? So I started asking the president for my mother's development about that. What is that going to happen to the people? Now, the next part to that is they're going to come. If you have someone living in your apartment and they're not on the lease, they have to go. Okay. They're going to put them out. They're going to redo these apartments, and so many people are going to lose their home, lose where they live at. So now this RAD plan, they claim what they're going to do once they do all of this work for the city. In 99 years, they are supposed to be handing over these development, the projects back over to the city. I said, is that a joke? None of us is going to be around in 99 years. None of us is not going to know what happened to that. And you know that it's going to be disastrous for people of color. So, Manny, I'm saying, and I was talking to the young lady here in my mother's development, we have to mobilize quickly because it's already in place. A lot of these procedures are in place already. Okay, so that's one. So now then you're going to have those people who are displaced. Then if you have this next piece that's going to go forth, which is going to hurt neighborhoods of colors where you have single family homes, it's going to be devastating to people of color. I'm telling you that because even if you look over there in South Jamaica, look over there where we are. Now, I don't know how much truth it is, but someone called me up to say to me, oh, they're going to be putting in another a homeless shelter over there in Southeast Queens. I said, you have to be kidding me. So I'm trying to look into that. So that's a whole nother issue in within itself. Now, look at the writing on the wall. All of these hotels that are being built all around the city, know what they're being built for? All of these individuals who are going to be displaced out of the public housing, who are going to be displaced out of their homes, and who's going to make the money? The corporations, developers, and all of them. So that's why we have to be on top of this. We can't just say, oh, no. And we have to. I don't care. We have to hold our elected officials to the foot. Where do they stand? Where does Adams stand? Where does Sanders stand? Where does Vivian Cook stand? Where do they stand? We have to move. I'm sorry, I'm just so upset about this here. But if we don't get it together as a community board, and not only that, our civic associations, all of them.
Listen, the bottom line is, I get you, sis. The bottom line is this, right? If we neglect this, we're not just doing ourselves a disservice. We're doing the generation that comes behind us a disservice. So the decisions we make right now in this particular point in time in history will not only just affect us, it will affect our children.
Yes.
It would affect our children's children. So there's so many things that has to be focused on, and this is definitely one of them. I see how many hands here? It's two hands. It's an iPhone.
Kenny,
All right, go ahead, Paul.
I just want to respond to a couple of things that Ms. Cook said. very, very quickly.
Yes, sir.
Everything you said is spot on. You're like 100%. And the thing is that the way the city does this, everything is fragmented, right? So what they do is homeless services is one agency and zoning is another agency. And again, this is what we talk about when we talk about real comprehensive planning. All of these things are taken into consideration at once. That's not the way the city works. The mayor controls everything on the homeless shelters, everything. The council has virtually no power on it, and it's something that has to change. There's legislation that can be done about that. But the one thing I do want to say is you were talking about the single family homes. The single family homes and the low density neighborhoods in Southeast Queens and even in Northeast Queens, we are the low hanging fruit. We're the ones that they're going to be like, hey, that area, that's right near there. That's the area that should be upzoned, for more buildings, for more high density, for whatever. And it's going to affect everybody. So I just wanted to say that, but you're spot on about everything else. So it's all a big problem and it's been going on for a while. Thank you.
All right, peace. Brother Anthony.
Okay.
Yeah, hello?
Yes, sir. Hold up. Anthony, I'm
Yes.
looking at the raised hands right now. So there's an icon in your menu that says raise your hand. So I'm just trying to have some order here. So Brother Anthony Race, can you speak, please? You got to take yourself off mute.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Kenny. Listen, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but 4 years ago, when they were developing all of these buildings around Jamaica Center, I kept asking everybody, where does Southeast Queens fit in with this? And even right now, the development is still going on right around Jamaica to Long Island Railroad Station. That, to me, that's the first part of gentrification right there. That's where we started to have a problem right then and there. And again, to speak to the shelter, again, right now, we fought to stop and get fair and equitable distribution with these shelters and these hotels being placed basically on the south side of Queens. It wasn't until we took them to court and froze them out that they realized that how inequitable the placement of these shelters were. And this is started 4 years ago. So now they have some momentum built up, and now they feel even more emboldened to come up with a program like this where they feel they can just run right over us. Now, worse than that, there's two parts to this, and Mr. Martinez hit right on that. When you start a development into a community and fill it with people, the next thing is going to be, we're going to have to change these lines, gerrymandering. Now, all of a sudden, Southeast Queens doesn't have the solid base of voting block that it once had. This is going to be a major problem. And like you said, it's not just for us, it's for generations to come. When you start talking about, people started talking about, oh, my property value is going to go up. Yeah, but who can afford to buy it when you don't even have jobs that have livable wages? So I don't, like I said, I don't want to beat a dead horse. We just have to organize around how to stop this, whether or not you got to take it into court or even to a federal court. But I mean, there's ways that you can do it, but you just got to be organized to get it done.
Peace.
Appreciate you.
Okay.
All
right.
Hold on.
This is
Who's this?
Cecil Lawrence. Cecil.
Cecil.
Yes. My
Okay.
question is, when will the council be voting on this bill? Because I think the best, and from my point of view, the best thing to do is for the community boards the boards who disagree with this bill, for us to organize ourselves and rally down to the city council on the day that they plan to vote on this, and definitely reach out to all our city councils to let them know that we want them to vote this bill down. So that's what I would like to see us, organize each and community boards get together, and we make a plan to go down the day that they're supposed to be voting on this, or while it's in the discussion process. We should show our strength to show that no, we're not going to go for this. And would you have any idea as to when they're going to be voting on this, or when will the discussion come up?
Kenny, can I answer that?
Go ahead, sir.
So for those folks, let me tell you what's going on. So again, this bill was introduced December 17th. Nobody knew about it. And Kenny can tell you, I believe I brought this to Board 12. I don't think Board 12 knew about this before I mentioned it. I've brought it now to, of the 14 community boards in Queens, I've brought it to 8 of them in 3 weeks. Nobody knew about this, okay? So what we're doing, or what I'm doing, and I hope that you guys are gonna be involved, is I'm bringing it to civic groups, separately, civic organizations met with. I've brought it to these community boards. The community boards are voting so far unanimously against this. They think this is awful, which is great. And this is in all different parts of Queens. I'm also meeting with boards in Brooklyn. Actually, there's a meeting tonight in Prospect Heights, Prospect Lefferts Gardens, East Flatbush, and Crown Heights right now, right as we're speaking. There's a meeting going on about this. I'm not running that meeting, but another group is. I'm going to be meeting in Manhattan. I'm meeting in Staten Island, et cetera. So I'm a one-man show. I'd love to have more people be doing it. It's great because it's really a big thing. What has happened in the last few days, and I mentioned this to Kenny before we had the meeting, is all of a sudden, because all of these community boards are now taking very public votes saying that this is terrible and we totally don't support this, now all of a sudden the speaker is starting to attack me personally, which I think is pretty funny, which means I must be getting under his skin, right? In addition, all of a sudden today, after he literally personally attacked me about 2-3 hours ago, they announced that they're going to have a public hearing on this in 2 weeks. How's that? So in 2 weeks, all of a sudden, after almost 2 months of nobody knowing anything, now they're having a public hearing about this. Now, this is after last night when I presented to Community Board 8 and someone from the speaker's office stood there and attacked me for an hour, telling me that everything I said is a lie and everything they're doing is correct and nobody understands and everything they're doing is for the people. So, and that's a video, which by the way is public. I sent it to Kenny. I'm going to be posting it up. He's welcome to share it with anybody who wants to see it. That was last night. So what I'm seeing in the last 24 to 48 hours is that the last month of my life is starting to pay off. We're starting to see these people freak out because they thought they were just going to sneak this thing through. They want this bill done by June. They want this thing done by June because they want to put it in with the budget. And let me explain what happens is when the budget comes in at June 30th, right? July 1st every year is the new budget year. That's when all the deals are made between the council
Got
members.
a chance to speak right quick. I said, this is a comment.
Sir, can I just finish up real quick?
No, go ahead, brother.
So
I'm muting everybody right now.
yeah, so basically what you're doing is there's going to be a huge deficit this year because of COVID, massive deficit. We are all going to get hit terribly. And what the speaker is going to try to do, in my opinion, is he's going to try to pressure people, even the council members who don't support this. And there already are a number who have stated very clearly they do not support this. He's going to try to twist arms to say, you don't want that $300 million cut from your community? Well, you're going to have to support me on this bill. So what we need to do is over the next month or so, because I know everybody's alarmed at this and they should be, we need to spend the next 3 or 4 weeks getting as many groups on board as possible. And then we need to go public hard. And Kenny and I have already been talking about this. That's what we need to do, in my opinion. We need
But
to.
it's definitely about just strategizing, organizing, mobilizing energy. And that means SUM. That's the acronym for SUM. So when you strategize, organize, mobilize energy, we decide the energy we're moving in. So when we talking about we're going to move, we're not going to move in a situation where we're moving with no clarity. That's why I said this meeting was very important tonight, because I needed people in our community to have understanding. Because when I looked at this legislation, it was a lot to read. I had to call Brother Manny Martinez up because I knew he was a lot more, kind of keen and had a lot of understanding to these lines and these brackets and all of this. Because I'm looking at this stuff and I'm like, could I imagine with my fellow brothers and sisters who have no kind of political, no kind of, political experience, and they looking at this stuff and they like read the legislation. So when you're reading this stuff, it's just looking like Chinese to you, a whole nother language that you are not familiar with. So that's why
Absolutely.
I really wanted to just bring this to the awareness and just say, look, this is what we gotta go over the wording. We have to speak about the wording in the context of what's going on between the lines, because we can see everything else, but people do not read between the lines. And that's what the importance is.
I just want to get the name of the young man that just spoke just before you, Kenny. Is that Paul
Oh, yes.
Graziano? That's Paul.
And
All right, I just want to get his name.
Graziano, Paul Graziano, that's me.
I have somebody
Okay, Paul.
iPhone, their hands are raised. Again, if you're just coming on, if you want to participate, all I'm asking you guys to do is just put your hands up so I can hit you in order. So, and if so, you want to talk to the people that's inside, hit the chat. If you have a question, those who presented, those who are speaking, they'll definitely address your question or concern.
Hi, Kenny, this is Yolanda Glover. It seems to me that this is just another attempt at disenfranchising people of the neighborhood. As we all know, or at least I think, that homes are the one way that we secure wealth for those that come after us. And when we buy a home, it wasn't, most of us, at least not me, it wasn't an easy undertaking. And I chose to live not in the city with big apartment buildings. I wanted to live in a house, single family, where I could raise my kids. Now, one of the problems that I have greatly is that they tried to sneak this in. Most other plans that they have for other communities, they're very transparent about it. I really wish that every person that's here would take it upon themselves to not only hold this information for themselves, but to share it with everyone in their community, so that when we do the sum, as you've said, we are able to show that our community is in fact united behind blocking this from our community. And that's really just my take on it.
Peace, Ms. Glover. Carrie Ann. Carrie Ann, you have to take it
Yes.
off.
Hi, everyone. I just want to make a comment about the idea of legislation being snuck through. I have quite a bit of legislative history and knowledge. This bill was introduced in December 17th, and it was in committee. And therefore, in order for a bill to move out of committee and be dealt with in the city council, it has to have a public hearing. So it's not being snuck through. That is the actual process to bills moving out of committee and to the floor. So I'm not sure if there was side conversations or, conversations that you had with Corey Johnson, but if the bill was in committee in December, what happened to, why did it have to get an actual public hearing? Because it could have died in committee.
Can I answer that? You're correct. I've also written a lot of legislation that's been adopted by the city, so I have some experience with this, particularly zoning stuff. But what I'll say is this: when something this big is rolled out by the speaker with 13 co-signatories, rolled out with a 30-second soundbite, then a report, and then a bill, and it's land use, and I think you know that with land use, almost anything land use is actually started by the Department of City Planning and goes through a ULURP process. So the community boards are the first ones who are notified. This was done, I will tell you directly, after my meeting that I had last night with Speaker Johnson's person, which was extremely interesting. And again, I hope you folks will watch it. It was very clear from the discussion that this is actually, do you guys remember in 2019 when we had the charter revision questions? That's when we did the ranked choice voting.
Yes.
Do you remember that comprehensive planning was one of the choices? It got voted down by 75% of the population. This is a resurrection of that failed charter question.
Hmm.
So they've been
Mhm.
working on this since 2019. It's the same team of people who have been working on it. And it's just like what happened with the third term with Bloomberg. There were 2 referendums saying 2 terms, and the city council introduced a third term against the wishes of the public. The public voted 75% against this. They introduced this, and as this has been going on, there has been virtually no response. The community boards have been calling the speaker's office when they find out about it. You know what their answer is? Oh, there's plenty of time to talk about this. That's not the right answer. The right answer is when something this big is done, you notify all the electeds, you notify the community boards, and you make it a priority that people are well aware of what's going on with something that is as earth shattering. And I say that in all seriousness, that will change everything in the city forever. This is not some minor detail. So this is all on the speaker. And frankly, this is about the speaker creating a legacy for himself. He is term limited out. He dropped out of the mayor's race.
Yeah.
This is all about him and his ego, frankly, and his connection, I think, to developers, and who knows where he's landing next year. We
Correct.
don't know any of this stuff.
Mhm.
So
Good
that's
question.
what I know. So I'm going to mute myself at that point because I'm going to start getting upset.
Interesting. Interesting.
All right. Derek Hamilton.
Hey, how you doing, Kenny?
Peace.
I just wanted to let everybody know that you can download an app called Five Calls, the Five Calls app, and it'll have all your local officials, elected officials on there, and you can contact them and let them know that you're against this bill. It's called the Five Calls app.
5 as in the number 5, or is it?
Yeah.
You spell it out.
Five calls, yeah, the number 5.
Can you put it in? Can you put it in the chat for people who
All right.
please? Is
All
that
right.
all you wanted,
Hey.
sir?
Yeah, that's all I wanted to let people know that they
Okay.
could download that, and everybody, it'll have their numbers, their phone numbers, email and stuff like that. And you can just contact them multiple ways and let them know that you're against this.
Okay. Does anybody else choose to have any questions, comments, or concerns? And if so, please put your hand up.
Well, Kenny, I wanted to also add to the legislation part of the question. We all know what runs legislation, right? Dollars, campaign finance, people who get the support. Right now, there's a trend of securitizing rents. And this is another thing that we have to also include into the equation. We're looking at $1 trillion market now. It's the same concept that was used when they were doing it for the mortgages that caused the 2008 recession. They're now doing it with the rents. It's safer. Somebody gets evicted. You usually have 20, 30, 50, 1,000 other people, depending, in the area that's going to come in and take over that area. The reason why I brought up the billionaires is because of the top 25 billionaires in New York City, 19 of them are in the finance industry, right? And so finance and investment industry, and you have 2 in real estate. So now when you're looking at, and this is addressing Ms. Cook's question too, and I apologize, my device restarted on me, so I forgive me. I was really in tune to what you was talking about. You were talking about RAD and the privatization of these public housing developments. It's the 99-year lease really has no impact. I just want to let you know that there's no impact on the 99-year lease. They don't care about that. They're trying to take over the development under the RAD legislation, and now there's a RAD blend. You have private managers who will come in and actually may get under disposition, right? Because RAD blend is the RAD privatization, Section 8, as well as Section 18, demolition and disposition. And they will wind up with 20% of the property, even if they were to take it back. And you don't have to wait 99 years for them to take it back. There's a 20-year housing assistance payment contract that's in place, and they can terminate that at any time, and that actually renews automatically. So those technicalities really have no impact because they're coming in to take over the rent. They're going to subsidize what they can until they can get the folks out, right? You know, if you look at Hopewell, Virginia, look at RAD in Hopewell, Virginia. There was a civil rights lawsuit that they won because of the harassment and because of, you know, civil rights violations. They were trying, you know, they were going to the point of trying to call ACS on the family because they saw the child taking out the garbage, right? And this is basically what they want to impose on us right now in these RAD conversions. They're utilizing slumlords. Wavecrest, who took over Ocean Bay, is a slumlord. Was a slumlord before they got there, right? They had 3,000 open. They had private properties in the Bronx, or they have. They didn't have. They still have. Out of those properties, they had 3,000 open work orders, and 600 of them were toxic. And they felt that that was a good candidate to take over Ocean Bay, forgive me, to take over Ocean Bay. And there's multiple slumlords that's coming in. Back in 2018, Mayor de Blasio had, which is also key to this legislation, Mayor de Blasio had 136 lobby meetings in 3 months. And 40, I think 46 of them, hold on, I can tell you, yeah, 46 of them were with real estate lobbyists. And some of those real estate lobbyists represent some of the private managers who are coming in and taking over these developments. The other thing that we have to consider is that in these neighborhoods that these high net worth individuals live in are represented by many of the council members who are sponsoring this bill, including the speaker. And so when we're talking about why they're rushing this bill by June, because what should be happening in June? The city should be stabilized against the COVID pandemic. That's the expectation, that everybody will be inoculated with the vaccine and things will be back to normal. And if this bill is already in place, then they're going to run rampant. And so, you know, we do have to use the strategy that Kenny was talking about: strategize, organize, mobilize energy. But the key part right now is strategize. We have to understand. We have to put together what it is that we are looking for. We're not just looking to stop something. We want to put something on the table for us. It's time for us to start talking about us. We have people in the streets right now in this historic movement, right, protesting this racial injustice, rightfully so, and we need to have their backs. And the way that we have their backs is by making sure that we stand up to that we get to the table and have the right conversations. Because this is what they're fighting against and not even knowing.
Right.
This is what they're fighting, and we have to now put on the table what we're fighting for. It's not just enough to stop it. Stopping it is just 1/4 of the battle. We have to know what it is that we need, and we have to start putting this. We want to be reflected in this legislation specifically. The next legislation that gets written in this area we have to find ourselves and our needs in that legislation, in that policy specifically. So, you know,
total agreement, brother. I see Yvonne Reddick on the call as well. Would you like to speak, ma'am?
Yes, I would.
The floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you. I think his name is Paul.
Yes.
There's boards in Queens. How many community boards have you attended?
I'm sorry, I missed what
regarding this issue.
How many community boards have you attended and brought this up in Queens in regards to this issue?
I've done boards 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, and I have setting up in 5. So I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 so far. 5 is being set up, and I'm in conversations with board 7 and 14 right now.
What about 6?
I'd like to meet with board 6 and 10 as well. Yeah. I'd like to meet with every board. Okay. That's the point. Absolutely. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is
because I know, as you know, 6 is Forest Hill.
Yep.
Covers some parts of Forest Hill.
What I did was I met with board 9, and you know, again, I'm not just contacting people out of the blue. A lot of this has been done through people I've known on the community boards. But what I did with board 9, they work with board 6 and 10 a lot. So I told them, hey,
Right.
rather than me cold calling them, can you contact board 6 and 10? And I'm ready to set this up immediately. So they were going to do that for me this week. So as I
Well,
said,
what response did you get from 11? That's Bayside,
Bayside, Douglaston, Little Neck, Oakland Gardens, and
right?
unanimous rejection with a letter to every elected official and the press. Unanimous disapproval from board 13. Unanimous disapproval from the land use committee of CB8. That was last night. They're having their full board meeting tomorrow. Unanimous disapproval from CB9 land use. They're having a special meeting next week to make sure their full board votes on it before February. This is to me, this is an insurrection. This is a grass fire, you know. This is like, for good reason, for very good reason. To keep CBs out of the loop on something this important is wrong. You guys are you're the first level, you know, you're the guys closest to the public. So again, the fact that I'm telling people is kind of crazy, because it should be the other way around, right? I'm glad I found out, and I'm glad I'm able to do this. But you know, so as I said, I'm continuing to do this, and whatever connections anybody has with any other boards or any other civics across, or any other groups across the city, I'm happy to talk to them. Absolutely. And one thing I just want to say, Manny, you and me, we're on the same page. And what we talked about, Manny and Kenny and I talked for a long time before. We had a long conversation before this meeting. And I just want to say this. The goal is, yes, this bill needs to be killed, but, and this is the big but, it needs to be replaced with different things, different conversations, big conversations about a lot of different things. And that's where Manny and I are right on the same page, because we need to talk about community control. We need to talk about community investment. We need to talk about all those things that make up what we are and how we're going to control it from our perspective, not from the city's perspective, not from the government's perspective. We need to work with government, but government needs to work with us, and most importantly, for us. And that has been sorely lacking. And what I say to people is, you know, I wasn't a big fan of Bloomberg, but what he did do right was the contextual rezonings. They did work with the community, all communities, communities of color and others. They worked really hard, and they didn't take preference on that. That being said, was it perfect? No. But under this mayor, forget it. It's been so far below that. And for someone who espouses equality, it's just an embarrassment. I will say one thing. When this bill came out, when this bill was announced, de Blasio, you know, folks are talking, this is all about de Blasio, and you're right, he does meet with lobbyists and he's in the pocket of the real estate developers. But his comment on this was, you know, this came up in the charter revisions in 2019 and 75% of the population turned it down. I really don't know why the council's bringing it up now. He was surprised, and he is not supportive of it, which, you know, in a way is kind of like a red flag. But my feeling is that he was blindsided by this, and this isn't something that even his developer friends want. So, you know, it's kind of a weird thing. The council, I was told by someone close to the council today, these people have pissed off the community and the developers, so they think they're doing the right thing, meaning the council. And they're not. They're doing the absolute wrong thing. There's no question about it. So I'm gonna stop there. I don't want to, you know, preach too much here.
Right. Is Paul, is there some type of you had sent me a link to some type of a petition or something. What was that about?
So 2 weeks ago, I presented, actually, Renee had a town hall meeting. She's on the call tonight. And we started a petition together. And the petition is, we've gotten almost 2,000 signatures in 12 days, which is outstanding. And a lot of folks from that first meeting where we had like 170 people show up, they did sign, which was great. And some of those people are here tonight. So Renee, I think you put it in the chat box. If you can put it back in the chat box again, that would be great. Otherwise, I can try to put it in the chat box. But if you look up, it's New York.
I have it, Paul.
Oh, you put it up? Okay.
Yeah, I put it up a second time. I'll put it up a third time.
Yeah, please just keep spamming the chat box with that. It's been great. And again, petitions are only good as the paper or the digital stuff that they're written on. But to get 1,000 signatures a week is pretty impressive. And it's coming from all over the city and people are sharing it like crazy. So it's really, really good. Like I said, the fact that the speaker is now all of a sudden attacking me out of the blue today, I kind of wear that as a badge of honor. I think we're doing the right thing here and we just have to keep going. So someone wrote, where do our electeds stand on this? I've spoken to several electeds and other people have spoken to others. There are electeds who are absolutely opposed to this. There's no question. But there are some who are in favor of it. And a lot of them who are in favor of it, they don't even know what's in the legislation. I don't think they even read it. This happens a lot of the time. Right. So, you know, we're reading it and we're horrified, right?
But that was the reason for this meeting. The reason for this meeting, because I from the meeting that I attended with you and Renee, I said I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to talk about nothing. I just wanted to listen. But after listening, I took my time and I went through this line by line. And then I said, no, this can't go. Like, we cannot sit here and allow this to get smoke screen during, you know, our community. December 17th, around that time, there was a lot of protests going on. So that was how certain things may have just, you know, passed people's radar, because there were so many different distractions that was happening during that time. And they continue to happen. But however, when these particular things happen, there's always something happening behind the scenes. And I believe this is one of the things, one of the many things that were happening behind the scenes. So it's our duty at this particular point to move forward in diligence and come together with some airtight solutions for our community. Because as I stated before, this does not just affect us, it affects the generations that come after us. And us being neglectful to this particular situation will definitely impact the future of our generations. And it's up to us. When we talk about buying houses, some people buy houses to leave to their children as generational wealth, to gain assets and help, you know, help build their families up. So we're at a point right now that this is critical, political, and it's something that we have to be able to nip in the butt like ASAP. All right. When is the next community board for CB12 is having a meeting next?
17th. Next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday. So
I have a question, Kenny. Question. This is an official land use meeting, correct?
Yes, sir.
Can the land use, do you have enough committee members to have a quorum? Can you make a motion to oppose or support this bill and then bring that to the full community board next week?
How many? I believe so. How many people here on the land? Miss Renee, Glenn, Mr. Reddick, Canoe. Just going down a list of the names here. We have enough people here. So what we're going to do, Lynette is here. What we're going to do is we're going to have a meeting prior to the regular board meeting.
On the same night?
No, before that.
Okay.
We'll have a meeting before that to discuss what we need to discuss. And then we'll be bringing our conversation to the board. So for those of you who are on the land use committee, just email me. I will have to go to our chair.
I was going to say, you have to discuss this with the chair.
As you see, I'm going in protocol. I have to discuss this with our chair. And once I discuss this with our chair, I will get back to everybody with a confirmation on what we have to do moving forward.
Kenny, this is Michelle. I'm here too.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, so we got a good amount of the land use committee that's here on the call. So as I said, we will be running this past our chair, and we will see. You know, we'll be moving forward. After that's being said, is everybody?
Kenny, being that we have a quorum here, we can't make a motion and someone second it and bring it to the chair. I mean, this is the form, being that this is our official meeting, or because this was a special meeting.
Right, Ms. Reddick?
Like, I can't make a motion that we oppose this and write a resolution.
Yes, you can make a motion.
Okay.
Okay, I make a motion that we oppose this and write a resolution, send it to our elected officials, our borough president, and all of our elected officials.
Glenn Grinder seconds it.
Glenn Grinder seconds it.
And I'm happy to send you other resolutions from other boards if you want to look at it, motions and resolutions, just so that you can confirm what you're going to say to the full board, if that's okay.
Yes, sir. You have my email.
I certainly do.
We already we starting off on a good foot. I will be talking to the chair to update her on what's going on, and we'll be moving forward. I hope to see you guys for CB12 meeting next week. Other than that, I appreciate your time.
Kenny, I have a question.
Okay.
Yes, the petition. Is there any way I can get a hard copy of the petition? This is Cecil Lawrence on the iPhone. And, you know, I could get signatures from our neighbors in the community, you know, a hard copy of the petition that he said he already had a petition going around. Paul mentioned something in reference to
Annie,
a
I'll get
petition.
it to you. I'll get it to you.
Okay, do you know who you're speaking with?
This is, no, do you have Kenny's information?
No.
Okay, I'll just put my email so you can,
Inside the chat?
yeah, I'll put it inside chat.
So you're gonna put your email inside the chat, and individuals who are interested in obtaining the petition, what they'll do is
a paper petition,
and just put petition in the subject.
Okay, now
this is Renee Hill. Renee Hill.
Oh, okay, Renee, I know who you are. This is
Okay.
Cecil Lawrence from Guy Brewer.
Oh yes, hi Cecil. Thank you.
Okay, all right then. Yeah, I will send my email to you.
Okay.
I'll forward my email to you, and this way you can send me a copy of the petition. I could print it up.
Yes.
And I can get signatures from the
From anyone you want. Yeah, from anyone in New York City.
Okay. All right then. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, there was one thing that I did want to say. I had my hands raised for a minute.
Go ahead.
If we take a look at what happened in what's going on in East New York, Brooklyn, and the pink houses, if you know, and they sold the pink houses, Brookline and Rockaway Housing, right? Now they sold that to a development over there, Hudson Yards, right? Hudson Yards has now ownership. They're going there, they're harassing the people over there that live in those housing projects. And I'm telling you, and they are not even taking care of the other development that they were allowed to buy over there by the Bell Parkway. So when we see what's happening over there, that same thing is going to be duplicated over here. And we see that the Charles Barron allowed that to happen in East New York. Are we not going to hold these elected issues accountable? I'm telling you, I'm there. I will go, I will march, I will do whatever we need to do. But we have to not sleep on this, because just like Harold Melvin and I said, Blue Notes, wake up everybody. That's all.
Okay. Sister Lynette, you have a message in the chat. Any more statements, comments, or concerns?
Mr. Chair, can I say something?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this meeting. What I want to say, and I think, Paul, you can agree, I think our next step, honestly, because this bill will be on the floor for hearing, for public hearing on Tuesday, February 23rd.
2 weeks from
So, correct, right?
Yep.
So I think what we need to do, Mr. Chairman, is that I think by 24 hours before hearing, which will be the 22nd on Monday, whoever want to testify can be registered to testify, and then you're able to testify against the bill on Tuesday. That's the procedure we have to go. the bill has to go to the floor. The speaker have the right to put a bill to the floor that he's working on. Now it's us getting together and get folks that can testify, get enough folks to testify, and make sure everyone have their facts and testify on Tuesday at 10 o'clock. And I think that's the best way we can do this, for them to see that we have a number of folks that are against this. The good thing is currently the BLAC members, I think it's about 5 of them that are supporting this bill. Out of all of that, I think about 5, right, Paul?
There are 13 co-sponsors already.
Correct. I think it's Gibson, Renasso, Rivera, Salamanca, and Luganis. 5 of them.
There are 14 people that are supporting this already, and they need 26. There's way more than 4 people supporting this. That's why.
No, I'm talking about the BLAC members, the Black, Latino, Asian Caucus members.
Oh.
That's what I was mentioning.
I apologize, sir.
Yeah. So maybe we need to reach out to some of those folks also to ask them to retreat, to go back and get their support back for this bill. Those 5 members, because I know Councilmember Miller spoke against the bill, that he thinks it's a bad idea for us to even push this bill now, especially during this current situation where there's the pandemic and the election year. So we need to just make sure we speak to the rest of the members who are supporting this bill before Monday, when we on the 22nd, when we are going to register to actually testify against the bill. That's what I think. That's why. And Mr. Chairman, I can forward you the registration link for you to send out for folks to register to testify on Tuesday.
And I'll be sending, if anything, we can send it to CB12, send it to the main office, so because they have a broader link to reach everybody. I don't have everybody's information.
Okay.
Kenny, is it possible we can get the name of the people who are supporting this bill?
It's on the bill.
It's on the bill?
Yeah, it's on the bill, on the top of the bill.
Kenny?
Hands raised. I see Renee.
Yeah, I just want to tell you, Brian Block hasn't spoken, then I'll speak after him.
Right. And I see Brian Block.
Okay, well, I'll be real quick, Mr. Chairman. I just want to let you know that I'm here this evening. I'm the chairperson of Community Board 13. And as Paul, where's Paul? Paul, there you go. Well, you know where we stand, Paul, because you know you came to us.
Yep.
So, you know, I just came tonight. I was at another Zoom meeting. I said, let me Zoom in with you guys. So, you know, where we stand. You know, we're totally against this. So I just want to let you know we're here. I came tonight and we're along with you. And it was good that I think Renee did this last month. But one thing, I don't want to bring, well, maybe I shouldn't, but just, I think this question should be put, suggestion. We having candidates are running for city council. Mayor individuals are running for the be mayor. And we've had, to my civic, several candidates, and this is the question we put to them. We put it to one candidate last month. We have another candidate coming up. We're gonna put the question. So I think you should get all candidates for mayor and city council on the record. Where do they stand on this position? No, maybe, we'll have to see. No, it's either yes or no. That's just a suggestion. Because it's your meeting. I'm not telling you what to do.
No, I'm in agreement with you. We have actually a candidate for mayor that's coming out to Southeast Queens to make houses.
Right.
What day is that? I believe, Manny.
I'm sorry, excuse me. February 15th. Eric Adams should be at South Jamaica Houses, 109th Avenue, and
well, you see,
we have quite a few people on here now.
Well,
that's running.
I'm just saying, Mr. Chairman. You know, I know what you're saying, Lynette. You know, one of the mayoral candidates danced around the question last month when we put it to that person, and that turned a few people off. The next person coming, want to see how they answer, but I think you should stick to your guns. Like we're trying to do at Cambridge Heights Civic. In addition to being chair, I'm also president of Cambridge Heights Civic, and we put the question to them. It's either yes or no.
There's no in between.
You got to see, or you got to do a study, or
indecisive.
You know, you guys either yes or no. And your city council candidates that are running, it's either yes or no. You know, but that's you know. So you guys,
I concur, sir.
You proceed as you see fit. I'm just here tonight to give you support and just listening. But I'm glad to be here. And Paul, continue doing what you're doing.
If my wife doesn't kill me first.
Right.
And thank you for having me, Mr. Chairman.
Not a problem. Be blessed. Is anybody else I'm missing? I see Claudia Perez. I see a hand that was up for a minute.
Penny, I'm going next.
All right. So
Okay.
go ahead.
Brian, thank you. Hi, Brian, thank you. And I think Brian already did the resolution for Community Board 13. I'm not sure. He might have left.
Yes.
No, I didn't leave yet. Yeah. Paul, I think, yeah, with my chair, land use chair, Richard Hellenbrecht, yeah, we have it. I think it's been put together, but trust me, we're totally, I mean, no, just for your information, we have the opposing side coming to our land use committee next month. So you may want to talk to Richard, Paul.
Brian,
and,
Brian, you weren't
know
on.
what I'm talking about. You know,
Well, I just want to tell you this, Brian, and I'm sorry to have this crosstalk here. Brian, last night I was at the CV8 land use meeting, and the author of the report showed up and basically told me I was a liar and told the community board that they didn't know what they were talking about. And the whole thing's on video. So I'm gonna forward it to you tonight, and I'm gonna make sure it's public. I'm gonna try to put it on the YouTube page. So I just want to let you know, and that should be distributed to everyone, Brian.
Okay.
And just to let you know, today, the speaker personally attacked me. So I feel pretty good.
So then you know you're doing the right thing, Paul.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you, Brian. So I just wanted to mention that Paul did help me with landmarking Asley Park. He gave me advice. He gave me advice with saving the VA hospital. So he's been in our community working. This plan would keep Asley Park the way it is because it is landmarked, but